looking back from the year 2050, you know, I think the most confusing thing about the 2020s wasn't the climate crisis.
No, definitely not.
Or like the political gridlock. I mean, it was really the fact that the fundamental rules of society they changed overnight, and literally nobody bothered to tell you.
It was a fascinating but honestly a pretty terrifying era. I mean, historians up here in 2050, we actually refer to it as the Age of Great Crises.
Right.
And I'd say the most dangerous part of it was this illusion of normalcy. The world looked the same, the apps on your phone functioned exactly the same, but the underlying mechanics, like the way wealth and power and opportunity were distributed, that had all been completely rewritten.
See, I look at it a bit differently. When I dig into the archival data of that decade, specifically looking at those huge technological shifts between 2024 and 2026.
The AI boom.
Exactly. I see this incredible, genuinely necessary upgrade to human society, like a massive system patch that streamlined our entire world.
A system patch, sure. But who was the patch actually for?
Well, that's what we're going to unpack. To our primary listeners today, the high school students of Madrid who are tuning into this historical broadcast right now from your present day in 2026, our mission today is to help you decode this reality.
Yeah, to sort of give you the developer commentary on your own era.
Right. We want to show you the hidden architecture of this huge, chaotic, multiplayer game that you are walking through right now.
And to do that, we really need to bypass the flashy headlines of your era and look at the actual source text.
The lived experiences.
Exactly. Let's examine a micro story from the 2024 archives, just to set the scene. Consider a young woman, let's call her Lucia.
Okay, Lucia.
She is 22 years old, she holds a really rigorous law degree, and she speaks 3 languages fluently.
Top-tier player.
Right. And her goal is super straightforward. She just wants to secure an entry-level position at a big corporate law firm in Madrid.
And, I mean, she does everything right. She grinds, she gets all the qualifications, she shows up to her first major interview.
But the firm tells her they are no longer hiring, quote, apprentices or junior paralegals.
Wow. Just entirely wiped out.
Yeah, the entire entry-level tier has been deleted. And the reason is this generative AI system. Let's call it Lex Alpha.
Ah, Lex Alpha. I've read about this.
Yeah, this software can draft, review, and perfectly cross-reference a 500-page corporate merger contract in roughly 12 seconds.
12 seconds. I mean, that is wild. So Lucia basically represents an entire generation of players trapped in a system where the rules they changed mid-game.
Exactly. She spent 4 years training for a job category that was just quietly deleted from the server while she was sitting in the library.
But stepping back for a second, I mean, replacing Lucia with Lex Alpha is pure, undeniable efficiency.
Is it, though?
I think so. I mean, clearing out routine intellectual grinding, the boring, repetitive paperwork of document review, that allows society to level up faster.
That's the official narrative, sure.
And the tech companies that build these AI tools, your massive platforms like Amazon, Meta, and X, they created these incredible hubs for innovation, free-to-play hubs, basically, where anyone can connect in a completely frictionless world.
Okay, but that narrative of efficiency is exactly what masked the reality of the situation.
How so?
Well, the sociologist Yanis Varoufakis, he analyzed this exact period and concluded that capitalism had actually died.
Died?
Yes. Replaced by something he called techno-feudalism.
Techno-feudalism. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, like, peasants and lords, but with smartphones.
The analogy is actually incredibly precise. I mean, think about how a traditional market works, right? Buyers and sellers meet and the market dictates the terms.
Mm-hmm.
But when you log into a dominant digital platform in the 2020s, you are not entering a free market.
Right, because a platform owns the space.
Exactly. You are entering a digital fiefdom. The algorithm entirely dictates what you see, what you desire, and what you buy. And more importantly, you, the user, are basically working for free.
Wait, working for free? By doing what?
Every time you scroll, every time you click, or even just linger on a video for an extra second, you are a digital colonist generating data. And in the 2020s, data was the supreme raw material.
Yeah, I see. So the CEO of the platform isn't just a business owner.
No.
They are the feudal lord extracting rent from the land that you are farming with your attention.
Precisely. And the physical cost of maintaining this digital illusion was just staggering.
Yeah. Because we think of the internet as invisible.
Right. The interface on your phone looks so clean and ethereal, like it exists in this magical cloud. But the cloud is profoundly physical. It is massive, warehouse-sized data centers consuming like entire municipal levels of electricity and water.
Which triggered that massive geopolitical scramble. I
Yeah.
mean, the archives show this ruthless new Cold War during this time, not for territory, but for rare earth minerals.
Exactly. Coltan, lithium, cobalt.
The critical ingredients required to actually build those server farms and the batteries in those devices.
And we saw the creation of these ecological sacrifice zones across the global south. Entire regions in the Congo or South America were essentially strip mined and politically destabilized just to keep the servers running in the West.
Wow.
The maintenance of this frictionless digital life was actively accelerating climate collapse.
You know, this is a perfect moment to pause and look at your own surroundings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you students listening in Madrid right now, pull your phone out of your pocket, look at the apps on your home screen.
Really look at them.
The narrative tells you that you are the main character, making free choices to connect with your friends. But if we read the shadows of the 2026 economy, are you actually just farming data to enrich a server you don't even own?
Right, at the cost of a planet that you actually have to inherit.
It's a heavy question,
Oh,
but it leads perfectly into the next layer of this. Because when entry-level intellectual work is automated by these feudal lords, the people who would have taken those jobs, like Lucia, they don't just disappear.
no, they are pushed downward,
Yeah.
which leads directly to the defining labor crisis of your decade.
Right. So let's look at another micro story here. If Lucia is locked out of the corporate world, where does she go? She and millions of others, they enter the gig economy.
Yep, the quintessential Uberized worker.
Think of a delivery rider navigating the streets of Madrid, or a worker inside one of those massive e-commerce logistics warehouses.
It was presented as this great liberation.
Well, I have to play devil's advocate here because it really was celebrated that way. It's an open world map, right? You log on when you want, you are your own boss, you have the total freedom of an entrepreneur,
Sure, freedom.
and there's immense wealth being generated at the top to aspire to. I mean, the economist Branko Milanovic studied this era, and he coined a really fascinating term, Homoploutia.
Right, the blending of capital and labor wealth.
Let's break down the math of that because
Yeah.
it's crucial. Historically, if you were a monopoly factory owner, you made money purely from capital, you owned the machines, and the workers did all the labor.
That was the traditional Marxist divide.
Exactly. But Milanovic pointed out that the elites of the 2020s, tech CEOs, star developers, elite athletes, they own immense capital, sure, but they also pay themselves astronomical salaries for their labor. They work incredibly hard. Doesn't that prove the system rewards top-tier players who put in the effort?
See, that is the seductive trap of the gig economy narrative.
What do you mean?
It points to a tech CEO earning a $50 million salary and says, look, labor is being rewarded, but the math of Homoploutia actually means the elite are hoarding wealth through both channels simultaneously. They're pulling exponentially further ahead.
Well, the middle is just hollowed out.
Exactly. Think about the supermarket cashiers being replaced by self-checkout screens.
Yeah, we saw that everywhere.
And what remains at the bottom is this new social class, the precariat. These are workers completely stripped of all security, suffering under a system called digital Taylorism.
Okay, Taylorism.
Okay.
That was the old 20th century factory model, right? The guy with the stopwatch timing how fast you can assemble a car part.
Exactly. Now imagine that guy with the stopwatch. But he's divisible, he's infallible, and he lives inside your phone.
Yikes.
Algorithmic surveillance entirely replaced human management. The warehouse worker of 2024 didn't have a human boss yelling at them. They had an electronic scanner that measured the exact seconds they spent walking to the bathroom.
Wow.
And if they deviated from the algorithm's optimized route, their pay was docked automatically.
You know, I was actually looking at the Spanish archives regarding this, specifically a policy called the Ley Rider. It confused me initially. It seemed like the government actually tried to step in and fix this algorithmic management. Did that work?
The Ley Rider was actually a highly significant historical milestone. I mean,
Yeah.
impartially speaking, the PSOE government, which was a sort of third way administration, they recognized a crucial legal reality.
Which was?
If an algorithm dictates your route, if it sets your schedule, and if it has the power to fire you just by deactivating your account, you are not an entrepreneur.
Right. You're a deeply subordinated employee, a false freelancer.
Exactly. So they passed a law forcing platforms to recognize these writers as salaried employees. It granted them access to basic labor protections, like sick leave and unemployment.
And how'd that go over?
Interestingly, European institutions really favored this approach. Because it provided a social safety net without costing government a single cent in public funds. It just forced the corporations to finally pay their share.
But even with those protections, I mean, the overarching instability of the era remained. And that leads to a phenomenon of the archives called the financialisation of poverty.
A very dark chapter.
Right. Think about the traditional social elevator. You study, you get a stable job, you buy a modest apartment. But when that elevator breaks, when your only options are a gig app or an entry-level job that doesn't even pay enough to cover rent, what do you do?
You are forced into desperate, high-risk behavior. Without a reliable path upward, the working class is essentially pushed to act like microcapitalists.
Yeah, this is where you see that massive explosion of cryptocurrency speculation among young people.
Or what the Spanish sociologists called the culture of el pilotazo, the desperate search for one massive lucky strike to just escape poverty.
And you can actually see the physical manifestation of this on the streets. Walk through any working-class neighborhood in Madrid in 2026. The most vibrant, newly renovated storefronts aren't bakeries or hardware stores.
No, they're betting shops.
The system essentially replaced the promise of a stable career with a slot machine.
It really did.
So, to the student listening right now, walking down your street, thinking about your future, the system suggests these betting shops are shortcuts to level up. But if we actually analyze the mechanics, are they just designed to drain the last remaining credits from players who have been permanently locked out of the main quest?
They are extraction mechanisms, plain and simple, which leads us to, honestly, the most powerful tool the system had for maintaining all this inequality.
The ideology.
The ideology that justified it.
Okay, let's dive into a classic intergenerational conflict from 2024 to illustrate this. Let's picture a Gen Z youth in Madrid. They have a degree, they work 50 hours a week, but they mathematically cannot afford to rent an apartment within an hour of their workplace. So they sit down at a family dinner. And an older relative, maybe a boomer or a Gen X, tells them, well, if you can't be independent, it's because you just don't try as hard as we did. When I was your age, I already bought a house.
Yes. The absolute failure to understand systemic economic shifts.
But again, I'll defend the prevailing philosophy of your era for a second. Meritocratic liberalism. I mean, the argument is that Western societies achieved historic, monumental victories against gender, ethnic, and homophobic discrimination.
Which is true. Those were real victories.
Right. And because those overt barriers were supposedly removed, the playing field was finally level. Therefore, the formula for life is simple. Talent plus effort equals success.
It sounds incredibly fair on paper.
It's the core philosophy behind all your entertainment. Look at pop culture in the 2020s, shows like MasterChef or any competitive reality
A
program.
MasterChef, right.
They promote excellence. They teach that if you push yourself to the absolute limit, you rise to the top. Individual drive solves everything.
Right, but if we pull back the curtain on that meritocratic narrative, we actually find a modernized version of social Darwinism.
Really? Social Darwinism.
Yes. Survival of the fittest, just rebranded as grinding.
But how does that invalidate the moral victories we just talked about?
The victories against discrimination were absolutely vital, but they were co-opted to mask a devastating rollback of the welfare state. The meritocracy equation entirely ignores the starting line.
Okay, explain that.
The archives explicitly note this. Having a, quote, natural talent for the piano usually just means you were born into a family with the disposable income to buy a piano.
Right, and pay for weekly lessons?
And take you to classical concerts. Talent is so often just the visible product of a wealthy socioeconomic environment.
So basically, your zip code predicts your success far more accurately than your actual effort.
Precisely. And the real danger of meritocratic ideology is what it implies for the people who fail.
Oh, because if success is purely a matter of hard work.
Then poverty is exclusively a personal moral failure.
Wow.
It teaches society that the person struggling in the gig economy simply didn't try hard enough, thereby completely removing any collective obligation to help them.
And the older relative at the dinner table. They are telling the youth to try harder, completely ignoring the hidden patch notes.
Exactly.
They ignore the fact that when they bought a house, it cost maybe 3 times their annual salary. But in 2026, a modest apartment in Madrid might cost 15 times a starting salary. The mathematical reality of asset inflation and wage stagnation is just invisible to them.
Furthermore, that pop culture you mentioned, the MasterChef model, it normalizes a hyper-competitive worldview.
In what way?
It teaches you that enduring extreme psychological pressure crushing your peers, and surviving toxic environments is the very definition of excellence. It trains citizens to view each other as threats rather than allies.
And as historians looking back, we know this inequality was on the verge of becoming permanently biological.
Yes, the biological horizon.
The 2020s were the dawn of accessible CRISPR gene editing and massive investments in anti-aging biotech.
When wealth can literally buy immunity from disease and dramatically extend lifespan, you transition from economic classes to literal engineered biological castes.
The completely pay-to-win reality.
Mm.
And all of this happened while the Western world faced a demographic winter and aging population, placing impossible strain on public pensions, while borders were enforced by invisible, autonomous AI drone warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a pretty bleak archive to unpack for you all today.
It is bleak, but, and this is crucial, only if you accept it as permanent.
Right.
If there is a singular sociological lesson we want to transmit from the year 2050 down to you in 2026, it is this. The code of the system can be rewritten. Social structures are not laws of physics.
So how do you actually hack a system that entrenched?
Well, the first step is overcoming what sociologists call state fetishism.
State fetishism.
It's this pervasive belief that the economy is like gravity, a natural law of physics that you just cannot fight. But it is not. Poverty, algorithmic surveillance, housing crises, these are not weather patterns.
They are the result of political decisions made by human beings.
Exactly. Think about the 8-hour workday or the concept of public health care or even just having weekends off.
In the late 19th century, those concepts were considered literal, impossible utopias.
And they weren't gracefully handed down by the free market. They were patches forced into the game by organized players, labor unions, citizen movements, massive coordinated pressure.
And if you want proof that these structures are choices, you just have to look at the geopolitical map of the 2020s. We can impartially compare the different server rule sets of the era.
Right. Observe the United States during this time. Decades of extreme neoliberal deregulation created a landscape with essentially zero social safety nets.
Which resulted in unpayable student debt, a devastating opioid crisis born from unchecked pharmaceutical greed, and routine medical bankruptcies.
Now contrast that with the European Union model. Countries like France and Spain.
Right.
Despite intense pressure, austerity cuts, and numerous flaws, the European model maintained progressive taxation and robust public services. Those institutions acted as a vital shield against the absolute barbarism of an unchecked free market.
Structures matter, and they can be defended.
Exactly.
Let's bring this massive geopolitical concept right down to the ground level, though. To your immediate reality in Madrid, I want to look at a highly specific microhistory from the year 2008.
A great example.
The regional government announced a plan to build a massive new metro infrastructure project.
A project that would have required the demolition of the facilities of the exact high school many of you might be sitting in right now.
Right. The government's plan was basically to condemn the students to study in barracones, prefabricated metal modules, for a decade while construction happened. It was a top-down decision, a mandate from the server admins that seemed absolutely impossible to stop.
And if the people in that neighborhood had acted like atomized NPCs, if they had believed the meritocratic myth that they were entirely on their own, they would have spent the next 10 years in metal boxes.
But they didn't. They formed a guild. They coordinated. The teachers, the parents in the AMPA, the students themselves, they formed a collective front.
They designed an intelligent strategy of protest. They painted banners. They occupied the physical space. They became highly visible.
They made the political cost of destroying that school just too high for the government to pay.
And the result? They forced the administration to publicly admit a planning error, back down, and relocate the metro stop. They literally saved the physical building.
The very walls of the classroom you are in right now exist solely because normal people refuse to be isolated.
That is the ultimate mechanism of change. When people isolate, the system defaults to whoever has the most purchasing power. The richest player wins monopoly. But when people coordinate efficiently, they generate real material power. Every public park, every labor right, every school building you enjoy is the inherited wealth of organized citizens who fought for it.
So, to you, the students listening in Madrid in 2026, this archival broadcast isn't just some dry history lesson or a class exercise. It is the tactical blueprint for your era.
Exactly.
You are surrounded by algorithmic fiefdoms, precarious gig work, and myths that tell you your struggles are entirely your own fault. But if your own community could stand up to the government and save your school in the past, You possess the capacity to hack the future.
The timeline between your present day and our broadcast here in 2050 is entirely unwritten.
So before we historians meet you up here in the future,
Hmm.
what are you going to build? The mechanics of society might look murky, obscured by algorithms and screen time, but once you know how to read the code, you realize the machine isn't broken at all. It's just waiting for you to take the controls.